Okay, so I get to introduce Marianne Johnson this morning, and I'm really excited about that. Marianne and I have known each other for quite a while. I actually didn't try to count. It's got to be at least a decade. I
I
mean,
looked 2010.
was it? Is that okay? So 7 years, 7 years. And I remember the first time I met her was, I think, at a family forum, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And you had a booth there, and we sat and chatted for a little bit. And I'd heard of you before that, but that was the first time we'd actually met face to face. And it was just a delight. I just really enjoy your, there's kind of an air about you, and I'm not very good at describing that kind of a thing, but it's something that has just always made me want to be around you. So if we lived closer, we would have spent more time together. I am sure of that. But meanwhile, Marianne has been doing quite a bit with her life, and I'm sure she can share a little bit more about that after I get done. Many children, beautiful children that she has raised, many grandchildren that she can tell us about as well. And she has also been helping homeschooling families really get a handle on what they're doing in their homes for quite as many years or more as we've known each other, right?
Right.
And she has the Spark stations and the closet. She could tell you more about that if she wants to. But really inspiring. We should do a drum roll or something. And so let's turn the time over to Marianne so that we can hear about her new book and what she's been up to, and she can just inspire us all. Thank you so much, Marianne, for being here.
Well, great. I actually kind of thought you just would ask me a lot of questions.
Oh, oh, that's true. We had a bunch of questions. You know what? And Marianne and I did go through a bunch of questions, and I didn't have them up right now. So hold on, because I did send her some things that I was like, I really want to ask you some of these. So let me go and find those really quick. I'm sorry. I was just.
That's okay. In the meantime, I'll tell people that I do have 7 children. My oldest child just turned 45, and my youngest is 27. So I parented actively with kids in my home for 39 years. It's a long time to have children in my home. Now I live with one of my children, my oldest daughter. My husband and I have our own apartment in their home. We're actually in a temporary home right now while they're redoing the floors in the new home that we all just bought together. So she has 4 children. One has cerebral palsy, and they range in age from 4 to, she'll be 11 in just a few days, the oldest one. And so I still live with children. I often think, will the time ever come when I don't live with children? And I don't think that time is actually ever going to come. So one thing that I think is valuable for people to know is when I talk from current experience. I don't have to go back into my memory to remember what it's like to be constantly interrupted, to have to connect with children regularly. We do have a door between us and them, or we did in the last home we had, and occasionally I could close it, but they felt very free to come right on in. I know what it's like to not be able to go to the bathroom by yourself, or to have a 3-year-old slip into bed with you at 4 in the morning. I still have all of those experiences. So that's pretty much my life in a nutshell.
That's amazing. That is really amazing. So I found our questions, but I'm bringing something else up that I want to share with everybody. I want to show them your book. So I'm pulling it up on my other screen. And tell me the name of the website, Marianne, because I had it, but you know.
BecomingAPresentParent.com.
There we go. Okay.
That would be a good website for people to write down, because you can get a free chapter of the book on that website. And I picked probably the pivotal chapter in the book to give away free, so that if someone didn't have anything more than that, they would really be able to do something cool with their family.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share really quick, and I'm going to show everyone that page. So right here is her website, becomingapresentparent.com. I've been on it several times in the last little bit. And it's a beautiful website, actually. I love it. And I actually know who did it. So if anybody needs a website, I have a secret. I have a
I might say here, this is just the page for the book, but it will take you to the website. I do have a new website, which is called MarianneJohnsonCoach.com.
Awesome.
And that also has a link that connects back to the homeschool website, which is still active and has over 500 articles on it. So it's still a good place to go for people who are homeschooling.
Yeah, and those are fantastic. And that website, what's the address for that one?
Home-school-coach.com.
Okay, home-school-coach.com. Peter Piper picked. No. So let me just share with you a little bit of, she's got the book on here, and she's got, she talks a little bit about what you'll learn, and here's the free chapter right here that you can go ahead and get a hold of. You can pre-order
I will tell you that the book is no longer pre-order. It actually launched on the 9th, but we're in the process of making a change to the site. So if you hit that pre-order button, it'll just go to it'll go to Amazon, actually.
Perfect. So she's got a little bit on here about what others are saying. Cindy Winward and her comments. Let me just read this really quick because I think it's really awesome. She says, I'm not much of a reader. Unless a book catches my attention within the first few pages, I seldom read it all the way through. This book not only drew me in from the beginning, but I finally had to make myself stop reading and go to bed. Becoming a Present Parent will be one of those life-changing books for parents and for anyone who wants to have an amazing relationship with a child. Well worth the read. And Natalie says, I love the concepts and I'm putting them to work in our family. It seems that I read exactly what I need to hear for a challenge I'm having in that moment, and it's giving me something to do that I'm totally enjoying. Now, what that tells me as I read that from Natalie, Marianne, is that you have timeless principles in here. Because if it's affecting Natalie that way, I'm pretty sure that it's because it's based on awesome principles, and so it's going to affect me the same way. So no matter where I'm at versus where Natalie's at, we're both going to get a great amount of information that's valuable to us individually and specifically at the time. So that's fantastic.
So I was visiting with an older friend this week who has the book and is reading it, and she said to me, my daughter called me, she's struggling with something in her home, and I had just read How to Help Her in your book. So it is principle-based, and I think it's amazing. I get that comment a lot.
Awesome.
It's just what people are looking for in the moment.
For sure, and that's what we need. We need something that's going to be applicable to the younger mother and to the older mother. So I guess I'm considering myself an older mother. My youngest is 12. My oldest is 25. So I've started the grandchild journey. I've got 2 adorable grandkids right now, and I'm no longer dealing with these little tiny tots, except for when my grandkids are coming over. So I guess, and they live close by. So Marianne, I'm not dealing with it on the same level that you are, as far as like they can just walk in and out of the bedroom door, but they are over several times a week. And like just last week, my daughter called me and she was dying because the baby was getting 2 new teeth and she had a double ear infection and she was miserable. And so she was feeling bad for the 4-year-old who was being completely ignored. And so luckily she could just drop him over here and my 12-year-old and he get along so well. And I hardly knew he was here actually, because they were playing out on the trampoline and building something in the garage and, all kinds of stuff together. But because, it's going to work for me with the youngest being 12, and it's going to work for her with her youngest being 11 months. Whoops, sorry. I don't even know how to close that because this is a brand new, there we go. Okay. It's fantastic, that we get to have that dynamic from one book. Let me also go over, so I like to call Marianne the connected mother coach, because in our busy world, being home isn't always being present, and she can help you reclaim that presence. That's from Liz Bradley. And that's really important for me too, because as all of you know, I run my own business, training and coaching Commonwealth schools and homeschool group leaders. And so when I'm in my office to some degree. It's like an 80-20. My kids can come in and out of the door, you know, when they really need something, or when something's going on like this right now, it's like, hey, I'm doing something live, by the way, you know, are you all set for the next hour or whatever? But I need to walk out that door, Marianne, and make sure that I am fully and deeply present with my children when I walk out the door.
So I saw an interest.
Yeah.
So I saw an interesting comment on Goodreads or Amazon, I don't remember which, a mom who had read the book who is in your position and my position, where she has a home business, and she was really struggling with that. She said, I've started looking my children in the eye and touching them more, and I'm amazed at the difference that it's making. So we all know we should look our children in the eye when we're talking to them, and we should touch them more. But these are things that we tend to forget. So here's a mom who's really been struggling, and all she's had to do is just adjust her thinking about these two really small, simple, easy to do things that's making a huge difference in her ability to connect with her children. And that's really the point of the book. Look, if you have to take your kids on a date every week or even once a month, and you've got 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, it's not going to happen. If you have to have a one-on-one with each one of your kids every day, I mean, I mentor lots of people, and I ask thousands of people, and I've yet to find a parent that's been able to maintain anything out of the ordinary for very long. And so I want moms and dads to realize that they can connect with their kids every single day, all through the day, without doing anything different than they're currently doing now, except looking at what they're currently doing slightly differently. That's the point.
I love that. I love that. So give me a couple of pointers from the book, some of those simple helps that can help.
So for example, the chapter that I'm giving away is called, it's about touch points. And touch points are the moments when we connect with our children every day already. So let's just take one, mealtime. You have to ask the important question, what is the point of a meal? And most people will tell you it's to eat, but that's not the case. The case is that the point of mealtime is to connect. And while you're connecting, you eat. And what does that look like in a family where you have 5 or 6 kids or 4 kids or 3 kids sitting around the table knocking over chairs and spilling milk? That chapter talks specifically about that. What does that actually look like? How can that actually be done? How can you shift your thinking just enough so that meal times become connection times rather than chaos or rushing to get to the next thing? And also, how can we connect during chaos? If you have a family, the chaos is the reality, right? I mean, more time than not, it's pretty chaotic when you have
my house.
That's right. So how do you do that and still connect? How do you maintain perspective? That's really, everything in the book is about that. It's about how do I live with what is and stay sane and love my kids and connect with them. How do I do that?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about,
we're looking for?
Oh, what? Go ahead.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, exactly. So I know I've got this thoughtful look on my face, but I'm thinking about how dinner times go in my home. And, you know, there's times when they go well and there's times when they don't go well. And I think that one of the symptoms, well, the symptom is arguing, teasing, and frustration happening at the table. And the reason, the cause behind that symptom, as I think it through and try to be more purposeful about it, is that if I come into preparing dinner from a stressed point of view, you know, where I'm stressed out and I'm like, oh, I gotta hurry up because I'm late, like dinner should be at 6 and it's already like 5:45 and I haven't started anything, and oh my goodness, you know, and people have to be places and stuff after dinner. Then that stress carries into the table. It carries all the way through and I'm rushing and I'm rushing and I'm feeling guilty and I'm feeling bad and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna, and it's 6:15 now and somebody's gotta leave at 6:30, you know, and I bring that to the table myself a lot of times.
So this is really common. I'd say that this is what drives dinner time in more households than not. Like I say, I just do a lot of mentoring, and just recently in a mentor session, this very thing came up. And so we talked about, you know, why do you feel guilty if dinner's a little late, and how do your kids really feel about it? And what if dinner's late enough that you can't even prepare something? We talked about heading into the kitchen and sitting on the floor and drinking cocoa and eating toast, and why that would be just as okay as if we had a sit-down meal. The book addresses real. It addresses what life really looks like in families and how do we manage around and with that realness. I think moms and dads spend a great deal of time in guilt when they don't need to. And I stress over and over and over and over in the book that if you can just adjust your thinking in a few ways, in a few things, that over time it will be enough. I must repeat 100 times in the book, small and simple things done consistently over time are what create the best families. There is no silver bullet to everyone's looking for a silver bullet, some big thing they can do, but really it's the small things that we do consistently. I mean, look at the numbers. You have 52 weeks a year, 7 days. Multiply that out, that's how many dinner opportunities you have. Let's say you're only successful having a connected mealtime 1/3 of that. How many days is that still? And if you multiply that times 18, you have many opportunities to really impact your family, and you do not have to be perfect. In fact, you can be far from perfect, and it still will be enough. If I can just get that message across to parents, because when we come from a place of confidence that we're doing our best and it will be enough, we're more effective than when we come from a place of guilt that somehow you're failing.
I've never been there. I've never been there. There's no guilt in my life. So we have a question from Rebecca. She says, my husband gets upset when our children talk instead of eat. What would you suggest about how to help him see things differently?
You know, go get the free chapter and read the section on meal times. Mm-hmm. And then just have a discussion with your husband. And here's the interesting thing about having discussions with husbands, in my experience. And I'm married to a very mellow man, and I still have this experience. A wife says to their husband, you know, we need to talk, and immediately he's thinking, oh no, she wants to talk. How long is that going to take? Oh, what does she want? So it's really helpful to say to a man, I'd like to talk about dinner time, and we need about 20 minutes. And he says, oh, okay, dinner time, 20 minutes. Oh, I can do that. Now he's already a little more into it. And then just share what you've read. You can ask, can I just read this little section to you? And then talk about it. So one of the reasons, there are probably many reasons why a person wants their children just to eat. For most of us, it's that we need to move on to the next important thing. But what I try to say is that the meal is the important thing. There isn't anything coming up that's more important than the meal usually. We can't say that TV is more important or chores are more important, or there's just hardly anything that's more important unless you have an actual appointment that you have to get in the car and go to. But we don't think about that. We have to be reminded that the meal itself is the important thing. Also, another thing is there's this feeling that if we don't just encourage our kids to eat, they won't, and a lot of times they don't. But when people are sitting together and they're laughing and talking and telling jokes and being silly and milk is coming out of their nose, truly, kids eat more. They just do. And I talked about that in that section. And sometimes we just need to be, we just need a mental shift. that's what we need. We need to shift how we think. So your husband, Rebecca, is not right or wrong. He just is where he is. And what you have the opportunity to do is to stretch both of your mind like a rubber band. Even if he doesn't change immediately, it never actually goes back to the same size it was before it was stretched once. That's just how it is. And over time, as we think about these things, we begin doing things differently. So I'd say read it yourself and then have a conversation and ask the questions to your husband. When we're eating, I notice you do this. What's your thinking behind that? You just want to know. How can you move forward till you know where someone's at? So just find out where he's at. It might be illuminating to you. Well, it makes me feel nervous, or whatever his reasoning is, and then you know how to proceed. Is that helpful?
I think that's great. I think that's great information. And it's interesting to think about kind of some of the stuff that you said about kind of living in the present, in the moment, right? And just, I'm one of those people who has a tendency to focus on the next thing. Let's get this thing done because we got something else to be done after that, and after that, and after that. And I battle that. That's a personal battle that I have, but I'm also, at least I'm aware of it. So awareness is the first step, right? That's a problem of not living in the present with my kids. But I will tell you that one of the funnest things, one of the times that I do live in the present is when I'm reading with my kids. And it's funny, my youngest is 12, and I have living at home now, I have a 12 and a 14-year-old. I have a 17-year-old that, do we really say he lives at home because he's working and studying so much? We don't see him that often. And then I have a 19-year-old who just moved back home. And so the dynamics keep changing, I guess, is what I'm saying. But yet we still read together in the mornings. And it's a present piece for me.
So let me say there are 8 touch points that I talk about in the book. 4 of them happen every single day in every single family, no matter where you live in the world. Because if you don't have car time, you have travel time of some form. Okay. And then the others are things you can add, and without too much upheaval in your family. And one of them is family reading, because that is a really powerful way to be present with kids of all ages. And I do talk about groups of people that are really multiple ages, like from 2 to 16. How do you manage that? How do you read together that? I even talk about the realities of that. That's awesome. Want you to know that I'm a list person, a serious, hardline list person. And I always have the next thing. The book has a whole chapter on that, just that. How do we get out of our heads? How do we retreat away from the list and become more present, not just with other people, but with ourselves? I am seriously challenged with that. But here's the magnificent thing. Once you hear something new, if you don't cast it out, if you just let it sit inside of yourself, it will grow. I'll give you an example. So in a church class, I read this in the manual. If there's a problem, it's your problem. And that made me so angry, because that obviously was not true. I mean, if someone else was being a jerk, then that wasn't my problem, right? They were the problem. But the thought occupied space in my heart and my mind for 10 years. And I never accepted it in the whole 10 years. I just kept thinking, that's not right. And one day, a serious situation came up, and I felt that I had really been on the receiving end of a very unfair situation. And I actually said out loud, well, if this is my problem, you'll have to show me how it's my problem, because I'm innocent. And I truly was. Mm-hmm. And immediately I had this thought, well, your response is the problem. It was like a light went on for me. It changed my whole life. It changed my whole life, because I could see differently than I'd seen before. But this little thought had to sit inside of me and germinate for 10 years. And so you'll read things in the book that you'll say, oh, I don't know if I can do that, but now you have the thought. And if you will just let it alone, it will grow. And over time, these new ways of thinking will change your life.
So what you're telling me, Marianne, is that I don't have to read the book and become that new person within a week. Like, I can just take this as it comes at me when the time is right.
Absolutely. And
no guilt here, right? Is that what we're saying? Oh, no guilt.
I say it over and over in the book. There's no guilt. What you're doing and what good parents can and should do is always learning new things and then letting them germinate. So here's what happens. You go to a convention or you read a book and there are a ton of things in there that feel right to you, that you ought to do, that you should do. And so you go home and you basically say to your family, we are throwing out our old family. We're going to do all this new stuff. There's a ton of pushback, and in a month, you're not doing anything new because you're all burnt out and your family's burnt out. What I want people to do is say, out of all this material, what one small thing could I work on? Because it's by small and simple things done consistently over time that the most changes is made. And there's even a workbook that you can purchase that goes with the book that walks you through that process. Every chapter, it will ask you, what out of this chapter really resonated with you? And you put it on a master list and you answer some questions to help you determine what out of this chapter is the most valuable thing that you came away with. And then at the end, in the last chapter, it says, now look at your master list, and we're going to choose one thing out of that master list that you're going to implement. Now, each chapter might say, this week, experiment with this just to see how it feels, because sometimes the thing you think is the thing, you experiment with it, and you say, nah, that's not the thing. I want to help people condense the entire book down to one thing that they're going to practice, one small thing. It might be just when your child comes to you and you're at the computer that you do this. What is it that you need? To turn, to just look at them in the eyes. It might be just to practice touching more. I am not a touchy person. I might have a child I haven't seen for a year, and when I see them, I don't always remember to hug them right away because I'm not a touchy person. It doesn't come naturally to me. I have to think about it. There are lots of people out there like that, and maybe their one thing is just touching more. And I give tons of examples of what does that look like. I just want people to come away from the book with one thing that really feels right to them that they can practice. No guilt. And when they feel pretty good about that, go back to their master list and pick another thing. I don't want them looking for a silver bullet because in my book they won't find one. There isn't one there.
That's probably a really good thing. And I like how we can kind of, like, the workbook is going to walk us through the idea of what is that one thing for you to work on right now. And can I share a story? It's a personal story. Actually, it's not about me. It's about my mother, but I think I can share it. She does share it quite frequently to teach a certain concept, but it goes right along with what you're saying about touch. So as those of you who have teenagers know that as they hit, when your kids hit puberty, a lot of people, I think, go through this process that I've been through myself, where they hit puberty and then there's kind of this hands-off thing. Like if you were a cuddler and a hugger before, right, Marianne? You know what I'm talking about. I don't know, maybe they're emanating hormones and it makes you stand off, or you are aware that they're so awkward with their body that you don't know what to do with them either, you know? But it creates a natural barrier. It's really kind of odd. But my brother, one of my brothers, I have three, so this is pretty anonymous. I'm not going to say which one. So one of my brothers was going through a lot of junk. Like, I mean, he was always cranky and he was always angry and he was starting to get really mean to my mom. And if you knew my mom, she's like, well, she's probably a lot like Marianne. She's like super sweet, always says yes to everyone, you know. And here my brother was like talking back to her all the time and calling her names and just getting more and more negative around her and just around the whole family in general. And my mom was so upset and so concerned, and she was hitting her knees over this quite a bit. And finally, it just came to her, you need to touch him. You need to touch him. And she had gotten to the point where she didn't even want to be in the same room with her own son. It was that hard on her emotionally that she didn't want to be around him. And so the idea of touching him was not this natural motherly instinct that she could just act on at all. And so she had to really make an effort. And she told me, she said, Brenda, when I first did it, it was like I wanted to recoil.
Yeah.
You know? But I made the effort, and I just touched him on the shoulder when I was talking to him. And then again, I would touch him on the shoulder, or I would walk past and I would touch him on the elbow. And she finally worked her way up to the point where she could hug him again. And he got calmer and calmer. It was like, that was the silver bullet.
Yeah.
And him, you know, it just took some time to find it. Like you said, you know, sometimes, but how much faster would she have found it if she would have had your book and your workbook and been able to go through this list of things and had, you know, had something as a start page to pick from and then be able to build on.
So chapter 3 talks about 6 skills that parents would be well to practice. These are really simple skills, and one of them is called random touch. Because there are certain times in life where we touch. Like we hug our kids if we're putting them to bed, or if they're going off to school, or if, you know, there are times that we do that touch thing. But I realize through my own experience and through a lot of research that as Americans particularly do not touch enough. And the older we get, the less we tend to touch, just like you said, even with teenagers who don't get grumpy and naughty. And so this idea of just randomly touching people is a valuable skill to practice. And it also specifically talks in there about teenagers, because children and teenagers cannot be touched in the same way. As we grow, we develop our own personal space, and we learn societally to respect people's personal space. And teenagers, they begin getting their own personal space. So there are just these simple skills that anyone can practice and use. And that's what I call it, random touch.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Will you tell us a little bit about some of the experiences you've had as a coach? You've been a parenting coach for years and years. And will you share, does any of that kind of stick out to you a little bit? Things that you would maybe share with us that would be helpful?
Yeah, a couple. So just let me say that when I began teaching, after I moved to Utah from Montana, I got involved in the homeschool community, and as you said, I developed a tool called the Closet, which was later renamed to the Spark Station, because my printer said to me, I was so intrigued, I went in and looked at the material we were printing because I thought you were teaching people how to come out. And so I thought maybe the closet wasn't the best term for the tool itself. And I might say that I do have a gay daughter, so I'm not saying that in any detrimental way.
But it was misleading. It was misleading.
But the title was misleading as to what the tool was. Right. So we called it the Spark Station, and then for years I taught that. And people would come to me, and I taught that specifically in the homeschool arena as a tool, an educational tool. What I discovered is people would come to me to mentor about that tool, and we would never, not one single time in all the families I worked with, did we ever talk about that tool. We would begin working on actually family connection. And I began realizing that not only what I knew about wasn't so much homeschooling as it was parent-child connections, but that the tool itself, the Spark Station, wasn't as much about education as it was about family connection. And so I began making this quite significant shift in what I began presenting to parents. So I did a workshop on the Spark Station, but I began talking more about the connections between people, parents and children specifically. And it was a 3-day workshop. And towards the end of that workshop, a father, because there were lots of couples there, a father came up to me and he was literally weeping. And he said, I have always wanted to connect with my children, but I just did not know how. I'm gone from home 8 to 10 hours a day. When I come home, there's homework, there's chores, there's bedtime, there's all this that has to be handled, and I never could find any time to connect. He said, this workshop has been life-changing for me. What was life-changing is that he realized that homework was a connection point. Chores were a connection point. I know the moms out there going, oh my gosh, those are the chaos points in our family. But one of the things I teach in the book and that I teach from stage and that I teach in workshops is you can have points of contention or they can become points of connection. And all it requires is a mental shift. So that was a hugely powerful for me. I also have had many mothers who feel so guilty as parents that they really are hampered in their parenting. And once we start talking about connection and they start seeing their children and how they deal with their children slightly different, the guilt seems to dissipate. They are able to give themselves space to be imperfect, knowing that if they are consistent, even in their imperfection, it will be enough. And that's huge for moms. There's a ton of guilty moms out there. I was a guilty mom.
I might be one. I might. That's really powerful. There can be points of contention or points of connection.
Right.
I love that. That is really, really cool. Okay, I just have to plug in really quick. Sorry, there we go. Okay, so you're finding, like, this is quite the journey for you. And I think those of us who are currently living what we feel like is our mission and our passion, we have gone through, I think, kind of a similar path, where maybe we thought we were doing one thing, but really it was about something else. At least I've been through that same path with, building homeschooling groups, right? And it's fun to hear your journey, but I think it's also important to recognize that this book, that the author of this book is not only a wonderful, beautiful grandmother who's been through the raising of children and is helping raise her grandchildren and is constantly in connection with that and the lessons that you've learned, but also helping so many other people through this same process. And it really helps develop the way that you're looking at these. Like, it changes your focus. And once you can focus on these specific issues, I'm so grateful that you now have been able to distill this information down into one book for us. That's huge, because really what we're getting is we're getting a lifetime of Marianne and all the stuff that she's been learning for her whole lifetime into this book. And that's what we all want. We all want this. It's the grandmother mentor. I'm sorry, Marianne, that's the way I see you. I just see you as this, like, it's a grandma in my pocket kind of a thing, the wisdom and the foresight and the hindsight, that you have, that you now get to share with us. So I'm super grateful for you taking the time. I know writing a book is not easy. It's a lot of work. And it can be humbling, as your stuff is torn apart by someone and try to get it into, like, the best possible format that's readable and understandable as you're trying to take all of that knowledge that you've learned and put it in a deliverable format. I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and I'm really grateful. So I just want to say thank you to you for doing this.
Yes. Let me just say here that what was the most challenging part of writing the book was coming to a belief that I had something to say. I have 6 children. Out of those, and let me say up front that I'm an extremely spiritual person as well as a religious person. I do ascribe to a specific religion, which I've been faithful to pretty much my whole life, and I felt as if I was doing all of the right things for my family. But out of my 7 children, I have 1 that is gay, 1 that had a child out of wedlock, 4 that experimented with drugs, 1 that currently struggles with depression, which is the family trait, I have to say. And you look at that and you say to yourself what many moms and dads that I mentor say: I somehow failed. But I also want to say that I have 7 children who are actively participating in life. They're honest, they're loyal, they're kind to a fault, they're good people. And so it took a while for me to be able to say, well, if I had been a good mom, none of this would have happened, right? No, life is life, and people make choices, and there are all kinds of things that go awry. And what I ultimately say in the book is, look, if you will just do your best, if you will connect with your children, despite the difficulties that will arise, and they will, you can still succeed as a parent, and they can succeed as people. And that was the hardest thing about the book. So the editor said to me, look, you've got to write the introduction first and get it out there so you can stop feeling bad about what is and what was. Yeah. And that was the hardest thing to write, was the introduction. But I feel now I want people to know these things, because if they don't know them and they read the book, well, they'll say, well, that's easy for her to say. What does she really know? But when people know what I've been through, they say, well, my gosh, if she can do it and her kids can turn out okay, then I can do it.
Thank you, Marianne, because we do need to hear that. I think, you know, the majority of my audience is homeschooling parents, and it's hard to be the pioneer homeschool mom, and a lot of us still are. I'm an odd duck, I guess, because I have 5 siblings, so I'm number 1 of 6, and right now almost all except for 1 of those families homeschools. So 5 of us homeschool. And you know, when I first started doing this, it was really scary. Am I going to fail? You know, and I didn't even stop to define what failure would mean, you know, and maybe I should have, because it probably would have helped me feel better about what I was embarking on. I just knew that it was what I was supposed to do. And I still sometimes, you know, a lot of the things that you're talking about, I've experienced some of those as well. And it's tough on you as a parent. And I'm constantly, you know, even though I'm like halfway done, like half of my kids have moved out and half are still living at home, but we're always trying to be better. We're always just, and I feel guilty over the little things, you know, like, oh my gosh, I don't have dinner ready on time or whatever, but letting go of our guilt overall as a parent, like, hey, one thing I do know is that all along the way, I have done the best I knew how to do. There's no time when I can look back and say, oh, well, you totally fell down on the job there. You know, if you would have just done this, well, yeah, maybe that would have changed the outcome. But at that time, that was the best I knew how to do. And I was doing my best. And maybe I was too tired to do something else that day, and I knew how to do it, but I couldn't because I was too tired or whatever. So, but this is a tool, you know, going back into your book. I don't know, I guess I'm in love with the idea of like, have the list of tools and then pick one at a time and go at it that way. So I'm
Yes.
excited about it. I haven't started the book yet. I'm going to it today, actually. So I am going to click on that button. That's why we're still on the page, because that button is mine as soon as we're done. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the share because everybody's been staring at my screen this whole time, which is kind of goofy, but I'm not moving off of that until I click that, because that has to be a part of my life. So thank you. Thank you, Mary.
Could I say here too that there are chapters that are specifically written for the parents, so let me just go back. You said that some days you couldn't do what you knew because you were too tired. There is a chapter in the book that talks specifically about that. How do parents nurture themselves right where they stand? I hear so often, well, you should go on a date once a week. Okay, how many of you do that regularly? You should take a vacation at least twice a year, just you and your husband. Okay, well, how many of you do that regularly? These are all great ideas, but they're hard to implement. And so as a mom or a dad, what can you do every single day to nurture yourself so that you are less tired? There's a whole chapter on that. There's a whole chapter on the value of simplification. Some of you are struggling, and I know this because I mentor so many people, and I live this myself. You have cluttered your life, your cupboards, your closets so much that it requires energy that you can't give to your family because your life is so cluttered. And how does a person really simplify? What does that look like when you have a big family? So there are chapters that address the things that prevent good moms and dads from being present more often because they're overwhelmed in their life and their brain. So it's a full package. Not only do I want you to be present and I tell you how to do it with your kids, but then I help you clean up so that you can actually implement.
Awesome. We need that. That is great. Okay, let me ask you a question, because that actually brings up something else that I wanted to ask you about. Tell me, are you still doing one-on-one mentoring for parents?
Yes, I am. I think you can access that since one of my sites is new, and it's always a little bit in flux. I believe you can access that mentoring on both the old homeschool site, home-school-coach.com, as well as the new site, Marianne Johnson Coach. And there should be a tab that talks about services. And of course, there'll be a page on mentoring that will give you that information. I generally mentor 6 months at a time. It's extremely flexible. We deal one-on-one. I don't have a service where you pick a date or a time. I usually contact that person if there is an interest and say, okay, how do you want to do this? I can also tell you that I don't mentor as, I don't have a pre-planned mentoring program like I'm going to take you through these 6 things. There's no plan. We decide when we're going to talk. It's not always the same day or the same time. And when we get on the phone, then we talk. And there's no plan because
it's individualized. Totally.
That's right. I'm really here to find out where your issues are. How can I teach you? I don't want to just teach you what I know. I want to teach you what you need. And so it's pretty individualized, and it's super flexible. And you can find it on both sites, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you. Okay, before we go, I was just going to ask if anybody else had any questions. We've got one more in the chat box, and anybody else wants to pop some in. Natalie says, what I find interesting is that even if we do the monthly dates and weekly mentor meetings with our kids, none of the true principles work properly anyway without the key of being truly present, like you said. It is the condition of your heart, choosing to be present, change your mindset, and touching each child. I love your work. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's so beautifully put. I hope that there's some way you can copy and paste that and send it to me. That's beautifully, beautifully said. It is the condition of your heart, and hearts are easily managed if we give them time.
if we give them time. I know, we just we need time, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Does anybody else have any other questions while I'm popping this in to a box? And yes, it does look like, okay. Robin said, this is exactly what I want and have been praying for. I would love to hear how you can help me. Okay, so Robin, try to log into those websites, home-school-coach.com, and make sure that you can get a hold of her through that. If you can't, then go ahead and you can get a hold of her through me, so you can always send me an email. And Marianne's email is pretty simple too. Marianne, do you want to give that out?
MAJ, the word coach, COACH @gmail.com. And I'll tell you, I try to answer most emails. I get some pretty interesting and long emails. I just got one yesterday from a mom who was having a meltdown. She said, it's a meltdown, and I'm going to practice vulnerability today, and she just laid it all out. And all I did as I read through is I said, let me ask you some questions. And I asked her questions, and I put them in just groupings. And she responded, and she said, it's changed my whole day. It amazes me how you can get to the heart of the thing and section it out for me. So I love receiving emails. I can't just mentor everybody all the time, but I am open to an email, and I want to know how people are doing, and I want to be able to respond.
And if you want to set up coaching with her, that's one way to do it. Try on the website first, because that form is probably going to be more likely to get to her directly. But okay, so majcoach@gmail.com, right?
Right.
Okay, and sorry, like I said, it's a new computer, so I'm trying to.
Can I just say too, the women who are on whose faces I can see, it really makes my heart feel soft towards you. You just look like mothers, and you look like busy moms, and it reminds me so much of how I normally look. I put a little makeup on for you today, which I never have time for most days, and I just love moms. I just want to say that we're uniquely called to do what we do, and we're going to make a lot of mistakes doing it, but I just promise you, I'm looking back from a long way, that it is going to be enough. If you will just keep practicing and looking and not bludgeoning your family with silver bullets, it's going to be enough. You are beautiful. I love seeing your faces.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Thank you. I appreciate you a ton. Okay, so if nobody else has any more questions, then it's about time to sign off. Thank you so much, Marianne, for sharing your love, your warmth, your spirit with us this morning. I think it's just going to make everybody's weekend a little bit better. And I want to make sure that everybody does the same thing as I do. So we're all going to go to Amazon as soon as this is done, and we're going to click on that button, or we're going to click on the button on our website, whatever it is, and get a hold of that book and just grab a hold of it and use it. So everybody's saying thank you in the chat. So Robin says thank you so very much. Rebecca says thank you. And really, I'm so grateful. So we're going to have this is recorded, so we're going to go ahead and it's going to be on YouTube. It's going to take me about a day to get it up there and get the link and everything to Marianne. So a little bit of patience. You know me well enough to know that you just have to, go ahead and remind me. If you're like, hey, I didn't see the link or it didn't come out or whatever, just send me a quick email real quick and at brendahaas@gmail.com and say, where did that go? And I might say, oh, goodness, I finished it, but I didn't hit send or something. So feel free to do that. Okay, you guys have a fantastic weekend. Snuggle your bunnies and keep them close, be present, and go grab that book. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye.